The Admiral's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You don't belong here. Not anymore." Gasps rippled through the crowd of officers and enlisted men gathered outside the Naval Operations Building. Every uniformed back stiffened, yet no one spoke. The woman before him, broad-shouldered, hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes calm as steel, stood in silence. Her hands rested at her sides, unflinching. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply endured the humiliation, while the Admiral's words echoed across the parade ground like a sentence passed. The injustice of it burned in the air. This was no ordinary officer being dismissed. This was a decorated pilot, though few in the crowd truly knew who she was. And now, with the Admiral's fury laid bare, they all looked on as if complicit. No one dared to intervene. But they would soon learn. They would soon understand why her silence carried more weight than any words. She had once flown the sleek shadow of death itself, the F-22 Raptor, through skies where even angels hesitated. Her call sign was whispered, not spoken. To some, it was myth. To others, it was salvation. Yet here she was, treated as if she were nothing, as if her scars and sacrifices were invisible to the very institution she had bled for. Her boots were worn smooth at the soles, not from parades but from endless deployments. The sun caught the faint sheen of a silver bracelet on her wrist, etched with names, 3 of them. They were the brothers in arms who never came home from Kandahar. She carried them with her every day, as though the weight of their memory gave her spine the steel that now held her upright. The Admiral never noticed the bracelet. He only saw what his pride allowed him to see: a nuisance, a threat to his authority, a woman who refused to bow. Years earlier, before disgrace had been manufactured and orders twisted against her, she had been fire in human form. The cockpit had been her cathedral, the afterburner her hymn. She remembered the desert nights, where the horizon glowed orange with tracer fire, and the ground below screamed for air support. She had been the one to answer. She could still feel the vibration of the joystick in her palm, smell the acrid tang of jet fuel and cordite, hear the clipped, trembling voices of soldiers on the ground pleading for cover. And she always delivered. The day her wingman was hit still replayed behind her eyes. The sickening spiral of flame, the helplessness as she screamed into the radio, the unbearable silence that followed. It was then she vowed never to let a man die without a chance, never to let fear dictate her choices. And so, her call sign was born, one that carried not bravado, but reverence. It was whispered in every squadron briefing, etched in the memory of every SEAL team she had ever flown cover for. They called her Guardian. Now, years later, Guardian stood silently as the Admiral's fury grew more theatrical. He accused her of insubordination, of undermining the chain of command, of being too much of a liability on his base. His words struck like bullets, but she didn't flinch. Around them, young officers looked away, ashamed of their own silence. But one man in the crowd, a Navy SEAL captain, noticed the bracelet. His eyes narrowed. He had seen that exact bracelet before, years ago in Afghanistan. He remembered being pinned down in a valley with his team, minutes from annihilation. Then a Raptor had descended from the clouds like a blade from heaven, unleashing fury with impossible precision. The voice that answered his desperate radio call had been calm, steady, a woman's voice. "Guardian on station, you're not alone." That night, his team survived. Because of her. The Admiral sneered now, gesturing toward the gate. "Leave. You've no business on this base." She turned slowly, shoulders squared, ready to walk out with the same quiet dignity she had carried through fire and storm. But before her boots touched the gate's shadow, the SEAL captain stepped forward. His voice was sharp enough to cut the silence. "Guardian?" The single word carried weight like thunder. Head snapped toward him, then toward her. A murmur spread. More SEALs, men hardened by battles and blood, realized who stood before them. And in unison, without waiting for orders, they straightened to full attention. One by one, their hands rose in salute. The Admiral froze, his face blanching. Every SEAL on the ground knew the name, knew the call sign. They had survived because of her. And now, they honored her the only way warriors know how, with silence and a salute that could not be commanded, only earned. Respect, the SEAL captain said softly, eyes locked on the Admiral. You don't demand it. You live a life that deserves it. The Admiral's jaw worked soundlessly, his authority crumbling beneath the weight of unshakable honor. No reprimand, no threat, no decree could drown out the sight of dozens of salutes lifted for one woman. Guardian did not move. She did not speak. She only let the silence swell, her eyes glistening as the ghosts of her fallen brothers seemed to stand among those south. The crowd would remember this moment for years. The day silent dignity crushed arrogance. The day honor stood taller than. Her words, when she finally broke the silence, were few. I never fought for recognition. I fought so others could come home. A single tear streaked down a hardened SEAL's face, but no one lowered their salute. Not yet. Another line etched itself into memory. Rank fades. Respect endures. The Admiral, defeated, lowered his gaze. He could no longer command the narrative, not in the face of truth laid bare. And when Guardian finally walked off that base, it was not in disgrace but in triumph. The echo of boots striking pavement was followed by a wave of salutes held until she disappeared from sight. She had been cast out by pride, but she left carried on the shoulders of legends. The story lingers like a shadow, a reminder that sometimes the strongest voices are the ones that never need to raise above silence. That the measure of a warrior is not in medals, not in speeches, not in the approval of authority, but in the quiet, unshakable bond of respect. Guardian never needed the Admiral's validation. She already had the respect of those who mattered most, the ones who lived, because she refused to yield. And now, to everyone hearing this story, where are you watching from? What would you have done if you stood in that crowd? Share your thoughts below, and if this story struck you with the weight of silent honor, subscribe for more stories that carry the voices of those too often left unheard. Because heroes don't always shout. Sometimes, they stand in silence and the world salutes.